Good afternoon, guys. It's O'Neill Anderson here again from GlobalFX. Now, as promised, as I said, I'm going to make a video breakdown of the USDJPY setup that I had sent on the Telegram group as well as on the private Sequels network. Um, Now, I just want to go back to the analysis that I had actually sent. Right, let's just go to that exact analysis. Right, so here is it right here. So this is the setup that I had sent, and this is based on the 1 hourly time frame. Now, as you can see that, or as you remember that, we had our take profit one at 106.442, and then we had our final target here at 107.228, right? So as I've mentioned before, that this analysis was actually based not simply because of this support to resistance we have here and this descending channel that price has been moving in. So I've actually looked at multiple factors, right, from a technical analysis perspective, right? So let's just go to let's look at this on the higher time frames, right? I think the first thing that I need to emphasize is that let's go to a daily time frame quickly. On the daily time frame, what we can see here, it's evident that um, price is actually in a correction, right? So this is just in my opinion. Others might tend to disagree, but in my opinion, I believe that price has been in a correction. Let me just mark it up here on the chart for you so you can actually see much more clear what I'm talking about. Um, Here at the bottom, right? So we had this bottom here that price had actually put in, right? Then you had a impulsive move to the upside. Okay, that's way too extended. So then we had this impulsive move here to the upside, right? Then you had price actually create this high here, and then price had this correction here, and then this is what we've had, right? Now I want to focus more on, or primarily put my focus on the correction, right? Because I'm actually looking to trade this correction here. The area that I'll be looking for, or rather the segment on the chart, or how back I'll be going, is that I'll be looking just after this impulsive move here, right? So from this vertical trend line, I'll be looking at analyzing or looking at what price has been doing here to the right of this vertical trend line, right? Now, first things first, as I've mentioned that this was actually based on Elliott waves. I won't get into too much detail with regards to the parameters and the fib retracements and so forth, but I'll try to cover as much as I can, but I won't get into too much detail, right? Now, as we can see here, right, we had this impulse move to the upside, and this was the end of this impulse here. Then you had price move to the downside, which actually formed this low here, right? So this swing low here, right, with reference to the right of this vertical trend line or vertical line that I have here in black. And then you had price move to the upside, and you had this lower high that price has put in. Then you had this move here to the downside. Then you had this lower low right here, right? Now, the way that I have marked this up, or there's a few key fib retracements that I did take into consideration. Now, if you take your fib from this high here to this low, you would notice that price actually bounced off of that 61.8 fib retracement. And I know some of you might have already guessed it, that we could be looking at some form of a cipher pattern or a XABCD pattern. And we have traded this here in the past before, and I think I did actually make a video explaining that particular setup, right? So you can see here you have the 61.8 fib retracement. But what's also significant here about that fib retracement there, if you take at your look at your fib extension, right, or fib expansion, as some of you might call it, from this end of this impulsive here. So I'll mark this my point X, right? And then to this point here, then right here again, and we can see that price actually further extended here to this fib extension right here, right? and the price here is 104.033. Now, what we can see here is that this impulse here, right? So from the end of that impulse down to where you had our first correction, right? So right over there, if you actually take that length, you would see that it's approximately the same length of this impulse here to the downside, where you had this lower low right here at the bottom, right? So this is actually an equidistant impulsive move to the downside, right? You'll see this much more clear on lower time frames, right? Now that's one thing that I've looked at. And then the other thing I've looked at was in terms of our cipher pattern. We do have a possible cipher pattern that is actually playing out right here. Now, if I take my fib extension again from this top here down to the bottom here. So now remember that we are assuming that it's a cipher pattern. So we're assuming this is point X here, then this is point A. So I'll take my fib extension from there, then I'll take it back to, or drag it back to where we have point X, right? Now, as you know that with your cipher pattern is that you are looking at a level here at 1 point, or extension level of 1.272, right? But price, remember that we've said in the previous videos that price is actually not allowed, or you shouldn't have a candlestick close below 1.414. So around this area here, just above 1.414, or rather 1.272, that is where we're looking to have this point here, and then price should then head further up, right? Now, if I just draw this in much more in detail, I'll just take this tool here. So we have point X, we have point A, then you have this point B. Then as you see, we have point C that actually did go to 1.272 for the extension. And then we're looking for point D somewhere here at the top, right? So we are assuming that this is actually going to be a cipher pattern. Now this point D here at the top, the way you get that is you'll take your fib retracement, right, from this high here down to where you have this point C, and you are looking at a approximately 78.6 fib retracement, right? So this is what we are looking at, right? And from here, you could have possible short positions coming in there, right? So this is the first thing that I've noticed, right? So just keep this pattern in mind, right? I'll just remove this pattern here. I'll also just remove this fib retracement. So that is what we do have, right? Now also, if you're looking at in terms of the WXY pattern, this is the impulse, the end of the impulse. Then you have this wave W here. Let me just remove this here. Then here you'll be looking for wave W. Let me just copy and paste this here so long. Okay. So that is where we have our wave W, and then we're looking for wave X right here at the top. I'll just mark this as wave X. Then we then also looking for wave Y right here at the bottom. Right, let's just go ahead and delete this one. And then this would then be wave W, right? Now remember that your WXY, right, that it is a correction wave, right? Or that whole wave structure is actually a corrective wave. And the subdividers, right? What I mean subdividers are basically mean the wave counts within this initial point down to wave W and up to wave X and down to wave Y. So in between these wave counts here, you're looking at corrective waves, right? Now, you can either have a zigzag correction, you can have a flat triangle correction, whatever the case may be. But just remember that for your wave W, that you shouldn't be having a flat triangle correction here, right? So just keep that in mind. So what I'll be looking for here, then I'll just go to a 4-hourly time frame. Just zoom out. Right, so as we can see here on the 4-hourly time frame, we have our wave X here at the top, then we have our wave W here at the bottom, and then we have our wave Y right here at this bottom right over here, right? Now recall that I said you're looking for corrective structures or corrective waves within, or rather subdividers between these waves here. You're looking for corrective structures. Um, so what we can see here is that from this initial top that we've had right here at the beginning, right, or at the end of that impulsive wave on the daily time frame, the way that I've marked it up, right, I've considered this as A, B, and then C, right? So that was a wave W, right? Then same thing can apply here. You're looking at A, B, and then C, right? And then for your wave Y, you're essentially looking at the same thing here, right? Which is this low here, A, then you're looking for B, then you're looking for C, right? So that is one way to look at it, right? But obviously it does actually get into much more detail, but I'm just looking at this from a much more broader perspective here. But let's just try to focus on the most recent price action that has been happening here. What you can see here, you could have had a trend line actually drawn in like this here, right? So from this top here again like this. So you could have this corrective structure over here. Then what we can see here that within this corrective structure here, you had this impulse move to the downside, right? And then you sort of have like A, B, C, D, E, right? Corrective structure. And then you had this continuation to the downside to come complete your wave W, right? Now, a way that you can also mark this up is if you're looking at your ABC correction, right? So from the end of wave X, you could have wave A corrective here, A, B, and then end of wave C, right? Now recall that on a daily time frame, we are at the end of wave Y here. Now I won't get into too much detail with regards to my fib retracements, as I've mentioned before, but this is the current structure that I'm looking at. And then in terms of support and resistance levels, I'll be looking strictly at, well, not strictly, but my significant support and resistance levels here, right, would then be right here. Let me just insert a different line here, right? So that is one that I'm looking at. You can see we have support here at this impulsive here at the end of wave A. Then you have price actually, it came up again to serve as resistance there, and you can see price actually bounced off that resistance level over there, right? Now, if you're looking at the most recent, just after we had this break here, right? As we said that we have a completion of wave C, we have a completion of wave Y, right? The way that I've looked at it is I've taken my fib retracement, right? So remember the sentiment or the bias we still have a bullish bias, right? So we are looking for long positions. As we can see that price is at approximately this 38.2 fib level here. I'll just mark this up with a horizontal line. So that 38.2 fib retracement. So I recall that our sentiment we are looking for long entries, right? And another possibility here, you could be looking at a wave, beginning of wave one here, then impulse to complete wave one, then could be looking at wave two corrective, then we could be looking for another impulse, wave three. And this impulse of wave three, it could actually be going to complete the cipher pattern that we have actually marked up on the daily time frame, as you might recall, right? So this is one thing that I'm looking at right now, right? So this, you'll mark this as wave one, then possibly have wave two right over there at the bottom, right? So this is what we can see here. So if I take it down to a hourly time frame, and which actually, this is how I actually got to the setup that I've actually sent you guys. What we can see here is that based on the 1 hourly time frame, what we do have here is we have an impulse, right? So from the beginning of this wave one here, or at the end of wave Y, or at the end of wave C. So you have this impulse here, then you have this whole corrective structure over here, right? Now, if you take your trend line, right, and you just draw it in like this, what we can see here, we have a descending trend line which served as resistance over there. And what you can also have here is another trend line here at the bottom, which actually makes up this channel over here, right? So this here, this is actually just similar to a flag, right? So you have this impulse correction, then you're looking for another impulse, and that impulse here, right? The way I'll be measuring it, I'll be taking a trend line from this impulse here at the bottom, and then I'll be looking for a possible target somewhere here on top, right? So this is what I'm actually looking for on the 1 hourly time frame, right? So in terms of my Elliott waves, that is what I'm looking at. Just remember this equidistant impulsive moves here. Then what we can also see, what I've also marked on a 1 hourly time frame, was this level of support or resistance here. You can see that there's a lot of indecision at this price area right there, right? But another significant thing that I want you guys to take into consideration, but just go to a higher time frame, right? Let's just look at the 3-hour time frame, for example, right? So we have a lot of impulse and correction moves here. So from this top here, right, to this bottom here, if you look at that length, right, and where we had, remember, this is a corrective structure here, right? And if you look at this length here, as you can see, it does extend down to point Y here at the bottom, which is approximately at the same point here, right? Now, same thing applies to when you're having or the beginning of this first wave count here. If I go down to a lower time frame, if you look at the 1 hourly time frame, we could have the same situation here at the end of wave C and at the end of wave Y. So this impulsive here, right, we could then be looking at this very same distance right here, or it could even be much more longer than that, right? So that's how I got to my market values, right? Now my entries as such, I just looked at support and resistance. I looked at this previous resistance area here, which served as support here, and I'm actually looking to buy here at once price is trading above this resistance here. I actually have a buy stop on this particular pair, and then preferred stop loss would be just below this uh, the end of your second corrective wave here, right? So this is what I'm actually looking for on the USDJPY. I just hope you guys found this very helpful, and that is essentially what how I got to my analysis.